Hi, welcome to Sarco Showroom and this edition of Unload. Today we're going to look at a rifle that looks from the outside to be just like a number 1 Mark III. However, this is the short 22 Mark IV 22 training rifle. England decided that we need a training rifle. Now up to this time they probably had 8 or 9, maybe 10 different patterns of rifles. Of course, every time they make a change, it's a different pattern with a star, with a mark. They converted Longley, Enfields, Medfords, a raft of the guns. Some had an aiming tube in, which was an insert that went into the barrel to shoot either 22 or a Morris tube, which shot, I think it was a 297-300 cartridge. This is the first time in November 19th, 1921, both the Army and the Navy we're going to use the same 22 training rifle. Of course, the British can't let that go. They made 1 or 2 small changes, like add the magazine box to the gun, and then it becomes the Mark IV Star. And then finally, in 1926, in May of 1926, they decided to redesignate the rifle the number 2 Mark IV Star. This rifle was produced up until the 1950s. They started production in 1921. The example we have here was made by BSA. They were made at Enfield, BSA, Lithgow, and Ishapore. Early rifles are not real well marked. Later on, they had more markings on. For example, this rifle does not identify it as the short Mark 22 Mark IV. The only marking we have on the right side is that it was made by BSA company. Now, in addition to make things more confusing, not only did BSA make firearms for the armed forces, they also privately produced arms and sold them to miniature rifle clubs. Musketry was becoming a big deal in England after World War I. So this particular gun was made by BSA. It didn't stay in England though, because if we look on the side of we took off again the rear forearm, we can see that it was stamped New Zealand. So this rifle made its way to New Zealand and at some point made its way back into North America. When, I don't know. But it has a brand new barrel. The barrel is actually stamped 1923, so this would have been an early conversion of the gun. Brand new barrel. It retained the Mark III sight, which was adjustable for windage. Other than that, we have a basic number 1 Mark III that was converted to 22. Some of the other changes they made in addition to the new barrel. This back one here, try not to break the glass, is of course it requires a different bolt. Not a center fire, but a rim fire. So what they did was they took some old bolts, they welded the hole up, drilled an offset hole, they put a floating firing pin in here. They took the striker, cut the striker off, so that now we pull the trigger, the spring comes up, it hits the new firing pin, and that sends her down there. Also needed a new extractor, and the bolts are marked 422. Interesting conversion. Like I said, they kept making these at Lithgow until 1950. Now, one of the other changes, like we said, when they went with the Star, is they put a magazine box in, and if you look at the magazine box, come on. The magazine box is going to be stamped 22. One way to tell if it's an original magazine or not. I've shot this gun It's not the most accurate thing in the world, but when you shoot CCI quiets through it, you hear the firing pin hit the shell before it goes out the barrel, which is kind of cool. Again, I have no idea if this gun was a commercial gun or if it was a BSA conversion, because a lot of times when they did the conversions, they took a lot of the markings off. Again, normally you would find the conversion markings on the left-hand side of the receiver. There's no markings on it. So we can only suppose that this was a gun that was converted at BSA to 22 and then sent down to Australia. Now, one thing when you're buying guns you have to watch is guys will put stuff together. For example, this buttstock, I don't believe is correct for this gun, even though it's marked number 4, says it was done in Lithgow. There's a serial number here that does not match the serial number to the gun. So to make it more correct, we would like to find a BSA buttstock, which would make the gun correct. But an interesting piece of history. This adds a little bit of, hey, that's a cool buttstock on it. Shoots 22 long rifle. Again, produced until 1950, and it was what the British Army and Navy used to train their troops in riflery. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Unload.